Echoes creating a narrative audio and transmedia story world, Heidi Bordogna and Payne.
Oh, okay, no problem. Wonderful. Hello. How's everybody doing? Holding up this afternoon? Awesome. Wonderful. Thank you for having us here today. We're very, very happy to be here. So thank you to everybody at the Institute of General Semantics and certainly to my colleague, Lance Strait. Thank you so much for inviting us to be here. Really, really happy to be here. It's nice to meet everybody. I'm Heidi Bordogna. I'm an advanced lecturer at Fordham University, and this is my partner and colleague on this project. You can introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Payne. I'm a poet novelist, and together we created Echoes.
So we're going to tell you a little bit about what Echoes is briefly, then we'll play some of what Echoes is. I'll plug that all in just a second so you can hear a little bit of it for yourself. Then we'll talk about transmedia and the specifics of creating this story world. So Echoes is, as I mentioned, a transmedia story world, meaning it's media content that exists over multiple media platforms. I think somebody had a slide earlier today that mentioned transmedia. You had a slide earlier that mentioned transmedia. Oh, that's interesting. And Echoes specifically is a narrative audio drama. The format you're going to hear is a narrative audio drama podcast. You're probably familiar with those. I know Sue also creates these. And the premise of Echoes, just very briefly, is that it is a grounded sci-fi story world. It's set in a near future world where reincarnation has been scientifically proven to be real, and the impact that that has on society in multiple areas, in particular, I guess, in criminal areas. And the word just went right out of my head, of course.
Criminal justice.
Criminal justice. Thank you. This is what happens when you turn 51. But criminal justice, as criminals can now be held accountable for serious crimes committed in past lives. And that's obviously a very controversial hot button topic in our fictional society, which reflects a great deal in our actual society. Mike, this just went out again. I'm so sorry. Okay, and then I will stop talking. I'll play some audio for you. Okay, sorry. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. All right. So here we're just going to have a couple of minutes of episode 2. This is it started as a 10-part audio drama, which wound up becoming an 11-part because episode 9 is a 2-parter. But this is the opening of episode 2, and then we'll talk about that a little bit afterwards.
Rest in peace. See you in the next life.
This is Jackson K, host of The Real Truth, the podcast with the best-looking audience on the internet. But on a serious note, folks, it has been 7 years to the day since the terrible events of the ignition point. I'm sure everyone listening remembers the confusion, the chaos, following the public announcement that souls and reincarnation are not only real, but can be traced and identified. Then ultimately the horrible attack on the people who developed soul mapping technology. Here is a recording of that moment. Terrible, terrible event. Here to discuss it with us are two genuine cops from the Past Life Crimes Division of the American FBI. Agent Silversmith, Agent Vasquez, thank you for gracing us with your presence today.
Glad to be here, Jackson. Love your show.
You're welcome.
First question, agents. Where were you when the ignition point bombing happened? Watching Senator Finley's back, chasing down the bomb threat, just moments too late?
I was very far away. There was a weapons ring in Arizona I'd spent the previous 3 years getting close to.
So you weren't in New York when it happened?
You have to remember that our department didn't exist back then.
Right. That was actually what helped you get started. Here's a clip of Senator Finley shortly after the bombing.
And this new bomb, committed by the reincarnated soul of Timothy McVeigh, the Oklahoma City bomber, proves that dangerous individuals can return to take more lives. I will not allow the American people to be terrorized by this threat. I propose the formation of a special task force to secure our freedom from exactly this danger.
And Agent Vasquez, how about you? Were you perhaps undercover with human traffickers when you learned the news?
Actually, I was on the football field.
Oh, I didn't know the FBI had a team. Do you have a rivalry with the CIA like that Army-Navy thing?
No, I was in high school. I'm 25 now, so I was only a teenager when the initial one happened.
Oh, well, so you must have been a rookie when you joined the Past Lives Crime Division.
I had 2 years in the Bureau before my transfer, so not quite.
Oh, well, how do you feel about that, Silversmith? What's it like to work with someone significantly less qualified than you?
I am not, well, okay, I have less years, but I'm still technically just as qualified. We still have the same job title.
So years on the force don't matter. All right, well, thank you for explaining that.
Oh, well, I wouldn't say that.
Well, so you disagree? And you think he is underexperience?
I didn't say that either.
I'm sorry, but I must be confused. What are you saying?
Well, just that I've worked hard to get to where I am, and I believe that my experience helps me immensely.
And his doesn't. I see your point.
Wait, what?
Now, some people, wackadoos that they are, say that we don't need your department, that Finley's fascists are going too far, violating our freedoms. Stupid, right?
Look, plenty of people are scared because in a past life, they cheated on their taxes or filched a little from the church collection plate. We don't care about that. We're concerned with real villains. The kind of bad you just can't wash off. We're talking about deep evil here.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. We're relatively easy to find if you want to keep listening. So I know we only have a few more minutes here. Oh, wow, that went fast. Okay, so Holly, why don't you tell us a little bit about the creation of Echoes, and then I can talk a little bit about more Transmedia, how this all started.
Sure, yeah. So this was originally my idea, and it came from a very personal place. My mother has died twice. She's come back again. She's actually doing very well now. But the idea of reincarnation is one that's been just in my life for a very long time. And I think in a lot of ways, storytelling is about coming to a place of comfort with the things that matter to us. So at first, this was just a story I had in my head, basically until I met Heidi, and she, well, we us together made it into something so much more real. And then from that point, the question was what media to use. Do we want to write a novel or a podcast, TV, film? And deciding what story goes with what medium is a very complicated question. And it depends so much on what you want to say, because the way in which you say it has such a big impact on how it's perceived. So I would say that's how it started.
Sure. And I think, as Holly mentioned, we realized pretty quickly, it started as this shorter concept. She'd written a short script to do a short film. And we said, there's a much bigger world here. And I had been already getting into the whole idea of a transmedia storytelling, storytelling across multiple media platforms, and really what that meant. And I spoke with her, and we spent a lot of time exploring this world, the what ifs. If this were the case, how would it impact religion? How would it impact relationships? How would it impact basically every aspect of society and the human condition? And we have tons of notes on all of that and what would happen here and what would happen there. And we realized there was a lot of story that could be told and a lot of information that could be communicated. When you're creating something that exists in multiple places, it's a little bit different than creating something that then winds up spinning off. Gotcha. Thank you, Susan. And so I just wanted to clarify a little bit of the difference between what transmedia storytelling is versus what people may sometimes consider it to be. They may not be as familiar with it in the media space, because we live in a world where we have a lot of franchise, and they're not always the same thing. So look at something like Star Wars Cinematic Universe or the Marvel Cinematic Universe. A lot of those things came about because there was one property or multiple earlier properties, and then they kept building on it or expanding on it. We were looking to do a different kind of creation where we said pretty much from the start, how can we approach, as Holly mentioned, what's going to fit best? Not, can we do a spin-off that's a book? Can we do a game? Can we do this? Can we do that? In fact, we're not as interested in spinning off as such as it is in a transmedia story world. Each format of media is going to give us new information and hopefully interweaving information. Okay, the idea that we're not going to have a game where you play the same narrative as what you heard in the audio drama or what you would see, hopefully, in the television show, which is our next step, which we are going to be pitching, hopefully. So that's also been a fascinating part of this journey for us, is really looking and saying what would be the best thing. Sometimes that was hard because we spent a lot of time. We started moving in the direction of let's pitch it as a television series, let's build that, let's think of that. And we realized some of that might not work for audio. And so we had to kind of go back and say, all right, all that work we did is going to sit here for a little while. And now let's start kind of from scratch. And go in the direction of audio. And so that's really where we wound up with this. As I mentioned, our next steps are ideally to be pitching it as a television series, but we also have pitches in both novel, graphic novel. We have one of our episodes that may actually evolve into a standalone film. And I don't know, is there anything else you wanted to share on either of those places, next steps and thoughts with this?
Yeah, well, firstly, thank you for engaging with the first 5 minutes. I hope you really enjoyed it. We are on Spotify and online if you'd like to follow us there. And yeah, I appreciate your time and your listening.
Thank you. And let me just jump in and say quickly, also, for any of my Seinfeld fans, that was John O'Hurley that you heard. It was kind of cool getting him to voice Jackson Cade, our flashy radio host there, who originally started as a younger, kind of flashy British guy. But when we had the connection through our casting people, we said, that could be not only certainly beneficial, but it could be so interesting to change the character. And I just mentioned that not to acknowledge him because you heard him. I wanted you to know who he was in case you're saying that's familiar. But to just also say that for us, Echoes is still evolving. We're not like set in stone where it has to be this, it has to be that. And part of that is the fun of a transmedia world, is that there's always room for more stuff. So I guess we will leave you with that. Thank you again. And I guess if there's room at the very end, we'll take questions. And by the way, Susan, I would say what you thought is coincidence in Shanghai, maybe not. Maybe you were there for a reason. So thank you.
Thank you.